Good evening, and welcome to the 2022 League of Women Voters of Falmouth Candidates Night. I'm Janet Lauer, Steering Committee Chair for the League of Women Voters of Falmouth. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to express my appreciation to the candidates for participating and for the watching audience for coming tonight. Also, a special thanks to FCTV, Falmouth Community Television, our partner in presenting Candidates Night. Thanks to FCTV, this event is being broadcast live tonight and will be rebroadcast several times in the days leading up to Election Day, November 8th. You can check FCTV's broadcast schedule on the station's bulletin board and in the Falmouth Enterprise. Heartfelt kudos to the dedicated members of the Falmouth Voter Services Committee, ably led by Jackie Ryder and Sylvia Solzkin, who have worked so hard to make this event a reality. A few words about the League. We're a nonpartisan political organization of women and men. We're nonpartisan because we never support a candidate or party. We're partisan to the extent that we do take positions on public policy issues, but only after studying the facts, discussing them, and forming a group consensus. We work to encourage active participation in government, to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Voting is one kind of active participation in government. We hope that the information provided by the candidates this evening will help you to cast an informed vote on November 8th. This election day, there are a number of lively contests among candidates who will represent Falmouth residents of the State House and in Barnstable County government. Candidates for local office are sometimes less well known by their constituents than the big names further up on the ballot. But what these candidates think and do directly and immediately impacts your taxes and the quality of life in Falmouth. That is why the Falmouth League has chosen to focus on local candidates at this candidates' night. The candidates will be answering questions submitted by the League and by members of the public in writing. Our moderator is Catherine Ident. It's now my pleasure and honor to introduce our moderator, award-winning journalist Catherine Ident, whom you may already know as the host of WCAI-FM's Morning Edition. Ms. Ident is a senior producer at the station. Her work has appeared in the Boston Globe, Cape Cod Times, Studio 360, Scientific America, and Cape Cod and Plymouth Business Magazine. Thank you, Catherine.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out for tonight's event. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get underway. We're going to hear from candidates in 7 races tonight, 5 of which are contested. You'll hear from candidates running from 4 seats on the county level all the way up to the state level. We're going to spend about 15 minutes on each contested race with the goal of asking 6 questions. Plus, we'll hear a summary statement from each candidate. I'm going to be asking questions that were submitted in advance by you tonight in the audience, by the League of Women Voters, and any questions that I may have. And I reserve the right to select questions and discard others during tonight's event. Each candidate will get 1 minute to answer the question, and we have 2 timekeepers who will let us know when time is up by raising a sign. Can you identify yourselves with your sign? Okay, there's a timekeeper. Great. I also ask the audience to take a moment and silence your phones. And while sometimes we may feel passionate about the issues that are being discussed, I ask you to refrain from cheering, clapping, yelling, so that you can hear each candidate's answer. Those who cannot comply with this request for respect will be asked to leave. So with that housekeeping out of the way, we're going to get started. We're going to hear first from candidates in 2 uncontested races. First up, we're going to hear from Cape and Island State Representative Dylan Fernandez, who has a prepared statement. Come on up.
I don't have a prepared statement, but It's good to be with you guys. Dylan Fernandez, I represent Falmouth. It's my hometown. Grew up here, graduated from this, well, not this building. This is much nicer than when I was here, but graduated from Falmouth High School in 2008. It's just an honor to represent what I believe is the most beautiful district in the Commonwealth and a place that is incredibly vibrant. My family settled here 4 generations ago. They were welcomed by this community as Azorean immigrants, and we will always be a welcoming community here in Falmouth. I'm really proud about what we've accomplished this past session in the State House around codifying women's rights in terms of their choice to choose, around codifying election reform, expanding voter access and mail-in ballots so that now everyone can take part in those reforms in the coming weeks that we've expanded the right to vote here in Massachusetts. And I see I have only about 10 seconds left, so enjoy the contested races. They'll be a lot more fun and interesting than mine. And thank you to the League for hosting and providing this forum for civic engagement.
The candidate in the second uncontested race tonight is Daniel Gesson, and he's a member of the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates. He couldn't be here tonight. He has submitted a statement which I'm going to do my best to read on his behalf. Good evening, I'm Dan Gesson. I'm proud to serve as Falmouth's representative in the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates. I'm sorry I couldn't be here in person. I'm currently serving on orders in my role as an officer in the Massachusetts Army National Guard. For those who don't know me, I'm a lifelong resident of Falmouth, graduating from Falmouth High School in 2018 and UMass Amherst this past spring, where I studied political science, public policy, and military leadership. Growing up on the Cape, and especially through my experiences in student advocacy and working with local government, I learned about the critical issues our region faces, especially our outdated infrastructure, the lack of affordable housing, and the urgent need to meet the challenge of climate change. I'm proud of the work we have been able to do since I became Falmouth's delegate in April, negotiating a responsible county budget, bringing Falmouth $1.3 million to be used towards wastewater, and working to create a $5 million grant program to help local businesses and nonprofits with federal funding. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and WCAI. That's on behalf of Dan Gesson. So we're now going to move on to the question and answer portion of our evening. In our first race, we have candidates for state representative for the 3rd Barnstable District, Republican incumbent David Vieira and challenger Democrat Kathleen Fox Alfano. Good evening to both of you. So we're going to alternate questions. We'll begin alphabetically. You'll have 1 minute to answer, and then we're going to move on to the next question. So that means, Kathleen, you're up first. What contributions have you made to the community that qualify you as a good candidate for this job?
I believe I'm a good candidate because I have worked tirelessly for clean water. I am the chairman of the Wastewater Advisory Committee in Bourne. I'm also the chair of the Jonathan Bourne Public Library Trustees. We have done an awful lot to clean the water in Bourne, but there's a lot more we have to do, and that's why I'm running.
Representative Vieira, the same question for you. What contributions have you made to the community that qualify you as a good candidate for this job?
Sure. So starting here in Falmouth as the town moderator now for 24 years in November, having served in municipal government and then as state representative, being able to work on projects that are so important to the Cape, whether it was in a bipartisan way coming together to create the surcharge, that the funds that go into our wastewater protection fund that we created just for Cape Cod, that's above and beyond the existing wastewater funding that was available from the state. The station, the Falmouth station, which was getting ready to get condemned by the building department and shut down. That's the gateway to Cape Cod and the islands coming through from Boston and Providence. We were able to get the $1.4 million and to put the lease under EDIC and fix that building. And a number of various programs throughout the community, but I'm most proud, I think, at this point, of the work that Senator Moran and I have done on the Early Education and Care Economic Review Commission, which just completed, and we're making great gains in the work that we're doing with early education and care for sustainable workforce living. And if we're going to close the achievement gap, we've got to make sure young children are ready to learn when they start kindergarten.
Okay, thank you. Representative Viera, we're going to stay with you. Identify a public need that would benefit from the legislature's attention and talk about some steps you might take to address it.
Sure, I'm going to go right back where I left off. Early education and care. Child care is important not only around the issue of affordability, but it allows families to go to work, whether it's two-person family that needs to go to work, or if it's a single parent that needs to be able to get to work. It's the only way we'll ever close the achievement gap. We're not going to close the achievement gap at the high school level. We're going to close the achievement gap by making young people ready to learn when they enter K to 12, and we're going to make sure that by third grade they have learned to read so they can read to learn. And then we need to make sure that we take the Economic Review Commission's steps, specifically the rate reserve. We need to stabilize the workforce. We need to create career ladders, of which part we've done of this in the last piece of legislation that passed in the budget. Affordability, the new market rate studies, navigation for families. Some families have the ability to get into the child care system but don't know how to enter. We found that through our studies, and so we need to work with EEC to create a system to be able to make those connections. And finally, a shared services model.
Your time is up.
Shared services model to save costs.
Thank you. Would you like me to re-ask the question?
No, thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi. The need that I believe will benefit most in the greater attention in the legislature is clean water. We must return to the clear waters that we have enjoyed not so long ago. Our ecology, our economy, and our health depend upon it. Our ponds, estuaries, even our bays are at risk. Perhaps even more important is protecting and improving our drinking water. At one time, salt was a most precious commodity. Now it's oil. Soon it will be clean water. The state and federal government must partner with us to ensure clean water in Falmouth, on the Cape, in the state, and all our surrounding waters. I will establish a Clean Water Caucus at the State House to join with others in the legislature, learn from experts, including our own state agencies, and collaborate with town leadership to ensure we all have clean water. I am very concerned about the adverse effects of the potential machine gun range at the Joint Base, sitting directly above our sole source aquifer.
Okay. Kathleen, we'll stay with you for this next question. Okay. A lot of debates between lawmakers on Beacon Hill happen behind closed doors.
Yes.
Is transparency a concern you hear from voters or constituents? And how would you try to improve it at the State House?
Yes, I believe transparency is vital, and the voters have to trust us. What I will do is have quarterly newsletters, TV shows on local access stations, and I will have open office hours for everybody in every town so that we can talk about the issues. I intend to make lots of, this is the time, is the time up already? No, it's to 0, okay. I will have my allies in the State House with people who are already in office and those that will be in office to work on all these issues that we will be talking about. I will not be a freshman in the normal sense.
All set?
Yeah, that's it for now.
Representative Viera, the same question for you. A lot of debates happen behind closed doors on Beacon Hill. Do you feel that transparency is a concern? Are you hearing that from voters and constituents? And if so, what would you do to try to improve transparency at the State House?
Sure, we do hear it, and I have a record of every session when we do the rules debate to vote to make sure that all of our votes, including our committee votes, are on the website, are available for public access. Currently, they're not. We've lost that fight each and every time. We do have the roll call votes for the bills, but they're buried in the journals, and they're difficult to find. And my conversations with the clerk's office is the bill that you're looking at should immediately be, the record should be clear to the voters as to where it came from, what committee, how the committee voted, and then what happened on the floor of the legislature. So I'll continue to fight for that rules package in January if you return me. Finally, I believe that we should, for the legal documents of the legislature and these, quote, behind closed door conversations, the documents should be subject to the open meeting law, the public records law. But I also believe that there should be an attorney-client privilege equivalent to that lawyers have. I have many constituents that come into my office that
Time.
have very personal cases, and the public shouldn't have access to those records.
We're going to stay with you for this next question. The Boston Globe recently reported that more than 50% of small businesses surveyed say they are making less money now than they were before the pandemic. How would you stimulate economic or workforce development?
Sure. So pathways is one. We're finding that many of these folks are telling us that they don't have the pool of potential workers to go forward. So one thing is dealing with our immigration issues so that folks that are in this country that want to go to work and legally work, we need to look at pathways. Just last week I had the honor of being at the ribbon cutting of the new science building at Cape Cod Community College. As the ranking member of the bonding committee, I was able to get a $25 million earmark, and through the generosity of the Wilkins family, with another additional $5 million donation to be able to open up those pathways so that we can create the sustainable workforce that many of our businesses are telling us they can't find. Science obviously is only in one area. We also must do what I said earlier, childcare. We must make sure that it's a good idea to go to work. Because if it costs you too much to go to work and put your children into childcare, you might make the decision not to go to work.
Kathleen, the Boston Globe recently reported that small businesses are struggling. They're not making as much as they were before the pandemic. How would you stimulate economic or workforce development?
I agree. I think that access to child care, especially for women, is a key issue. Like you said, as David said, if you can't afford to go to work because you're paying more for child care, that's not acceptable. We need to really, we lost about 25% of our child care during the pandemic. We need to build that up again. And also we need to mentor young people, especially girls, to help them achieve their dreams. And the other thing that I would do, as I was talking with the woman who will be our auditor, and we will lower the fees that you need to pay when you have a small business. Right now, the fees are the exact same for a mom and pop store as they are for McDonald's. So we need to have a much more of a tiered system so that you're not paying such a ridiculous amount just to open a business.
Okay. I'm going to stay with you, Kathleen, for this next question. Medical aid in dying is the option for hospice-eligible, capable adults to receive a prescription from their physicians to have a peaceful death. There's been legislation on this issue before, and there's been ballot questions. There's been a lot of talk about this over the last dozen or so years. What is your position on this issue and why?
I support medical aid in dying. I believe that if someone is at the point where they know with their doctor that the end is nigh, but the pain and suffering is too much, we can be compassionate. We can allow that person to simply, as you said, take a drink that has been prescribed and end the suffering. 14 states, I believe, have already passed this law. About 8,000 people have taken the prescription. 5,000 have used it. This isn't a tremendous amount of people, but if you know, and as I do, when someone is suffering in horrible pain, having them last another week just so you can have them with you is cruel. So I am definitely for medical aid in dying.
Representative Vieira, would you like me to restate the question?
No, you don't need to restate the question, and the voters know that I've been opposed to it. The voters have been opposed to it every time it's come to a ballot. And many of you knew my mother, Donna Vieira. You knew during one of my campaigns, we pulled the plug because she wasn't going to make it. She wasn't going to make it until we found out that medicine is not an exact science. And after 36 hours, we decided to put her back on the ventilator. And 2 months later, we weaned it off. She saw me get elected as state representative. She saw me get married. She saw her first grandchild, my daughter Emma. I will not vote for it if it comes before me in the legislature. I'm a legislator. I'm not God.
We're going to stay with you, Representative. It's been widely reported that the Cape is in a housing crisis, along with other areas of Massachusetts. There have been proposals put forth at the State House, including a provision to allow cities and towns to place a surcharge on real estate transactions over a certain threshold to fund affordable housing initiatives on the local level. Do you support measures like this? And if not, what would you do to help address the housing crisis?
Sure. If a municipality brings a home rule petition and those voters in that community believe that's the way they want to go, I wouldn't stand in the way of a local option, okay? If it was a statewide mandate, I would vote against it. I would want the communities to decide whether or not that's the path forward for their affordable housing issues. What I would do and will continue to do is try to get this economic development bill out of conference committee so that we can continue to invest in the infrastructure necessary to make these affordable housing projects reasonable. Right here in my district, under Governor Patrick's leadership, working in a bipartisan way, we brought a Mass Works grant so that we could do the Market Street extension in Mashpee Commons. We've most recently, with the Baker-Polito administration, brought in the funding to be able to increase the wastewater capacity of 100,000 gallons a day in Buzzards Bay so that we can open up not only commercial development, but also some more residential development there. And so I believe that my role in this is to be able to assist the communities to move forward with the paths that they choose to be able to move forward and give them the infrastructure necessary.
Would you like me to restate the question? Please. It's been widely reported the Cape is in a housing crisis along with other areas of the state. There have been proposals put forth at the State House, including a provision to allow cities and towns to place a surcharge on real estate transactions over a certain threshold to fund affordable housing initiatives on the local level. Do you support measures like this? If not, what would you do to help address the housing crisis?
I agree that if it's a certain town that wants to do that, that's fine, but as a statewide thing, no, I don't agree with that, because we also have the Fair Share Amendment that looks like it could pass, and that would also be putting a burden on the same people, and I don't think that's fair. However, I do think there are many ways we can work on workforce housing. It's not just affordable housing, because as you know, the criteria for affordable housing is no longer affordable. So we need workforce housing, where people who are going to be working in Falmouth, say they have a letter saying they are working here, we need to help provide an overlay for an economic district for just workforce housing. I also have Bourne and Mashpee. They need to do this as well so that we can afford to have people here who are our nurses, our medical technicians, our teachers, so they can afford to move here and survive.
So that concludes the question and answer portion for this race. And so now each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to make a summary statement, and we'll start with Representative Vieira.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor of my life to be your state representative. As a young man standing at that podium right there, I ran my first student town meeting for student government here in Falmouth and thought, you know what, I might want to do this in the town, and then I went on to be town moderator and saw how we can empower our communities to improve our lives. And I made a commitment to do that. I went to American University in Washington, D.C., and immediately came back to the community. My favorite John Kennedy quote is, "Let us not seek the Republican answer nor the Democratic answer, but the right answer." Someone mentioned when I walked in, "I like your tie." Thanks, Kathy. It's a purple tie. My wife's an art teacher. She's now the principal here at the North Falmouth Elementary School, but as an art teacher, she taught me that when you mix red and you mix blue, you get purple. And that is how I believe my role as your legislator is to build trust, to work across the aisle, and to get things done. And I understand that during COVID, we lost some of our communications. My cable access show, On the Road with Dave Vieira, did go off the air. We started bringing it back in 2020. COVID hit, it went off the air again. So I will commit to you to the issues that Kathy raised, to communicate better, to bring On the Road with Dave Vieira back on the air, and to get those newsletters quarterly out so that you know what I'm doing. Because those of you that have watched know what I'm doing. I'm Dave Vieira, I'm from T-Ticket, and it's an honor to be your rep. Thank you.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, FCTV, Catherine, our moderator, and most importantly, you, our audience, who will make the decisions in this critical election. We work for you. I am running to give you, the voters, a choice. I will fight tirelessly for clean water, essential to all of us. We cannot ignore climate change and how radically it will change the Cape. We must start now to preserve our precious coastline. I will stand up for women's rights. My opponent voted against the Roe Act. I will vote for every bill that supports women. I will advocate for Native American rights, for medical aid in dying, for gun violence prevention, for seniors' rights and increased senior housing, for workforce housing, the blue and green economy, small business development, and full funding for our beloved libraries. I will collaborate with our town leaders to find solutions. I will advocate for state funds to lower or mitigate costs for these vital projects. I will collaborate with the Cape Cod delegation and the Cape Cod Commission at every opportunity. I will be the team player for the 3rd Barnstable District. As a member of the majority party, I am far more likely to bring funds back to Falmouth and to sponsor and pass legislation that will benefit us all. Together, we will make Falmouth an even better place to live. I will be a different style of state rep. I will communicate with you with newsletters, informative TV shows, and on our local access stations. I will hold advertised open hours for each town so I can meet with anyone, not just a select group, about their concerns. I will listen, learn, and take action. If your priorities are my priorities,
Time.
please vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering these questions this evening. We're now going to switch, and we're going to have candidates for state senate, and that is incumbent Sue Moran and her challenger, Carrie McRae. If you could come on up. Thank you very much. Start in alphabetical order. We have 1 minute to answer questions. And so, Carrie, you're first. What contributions have you made to the community that qualify you as a good candidate for this job?
Well, thank you very much for your time and for you all being here in attendance today. Is that not loud enough?
Maybe
You might
move
want
it
to come closer.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Is that better? Okay. Closer. There we go. Okay. So sorry about that. Thank you very much for your time. I think what makes me a great candidate is I'm always learning, and as an educator, for years I've been teaching students, but more than that, I've actually learned from all of them. And I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly taking advice from people, and I have a very relatable way about me, because I feel that everybody has a voice and everyone's voice matters. And I just think that it's important for people to be involved in their community. And for me, living in Bourne, I've lived there my whole life, and I've been an active member of the community. I'm now on the school committee, because as a teacher, I saw things were going in a certain direction, and I just wanted to be involved. So I'm very involved, and that's my story.
Representative Moran?
Yes, thank you, Senator.
Sorry, Senator.
That's
Excuse
quite
me.
all right. I
Excuse me.
represent the people. I'm just used to the name. It's fantastic to see you all here. Thanks for coming out. I started actually at a library board, and a seat open on the Board of Selectmen, and folks asked me to run. And I thought for a second, my son had just gone to college, and like everyone, I said, yeah, I need another job. So after I was elected and I became chair, I also ran for the Assembly of Delegates, became deputy speaker. During that time, I volunteered for every possible committee I could fit into the schedule of being a mom and a lawyer. Veterans issues, the Water Quality Coalition, I was vice chair of the EDIC, the Falmouth Economic Development, because I was smart enough to get the HUI General Counsel to be chair. So with all of that studying, it's been terrifically important to represent the community.
Okay, great. We'll stay with you, Senator Moran. How do or will you balance advocating for your own views while also working with and listening to alternative views from colleagues that you work with in various groups and committees?
So in my career as a litigation attorney, you really are just going to hit a wall if you don't listen to where the other person is coming from. My dad especially taught me, and he was very active at town meeting, for example. He was in a wheelchair, he's an advocate, that you learn more if you listen. And take for an example, the widening of Route 28. As chair of the Board of Selectmen, we found that there was tremendous concern about the state coming in, widening the road when folks' yards go right up toward the edge. Their kids, grandkids are playing ball in front. There might be a terrific tree that they planted so many years ago. I started a committee where those folks could speak directly with the town representatives and the state representatives, and it came to a terrific conclusion that people could live with and were fairly happy with.
Would you like me to restate the question?
No, I'm all set.
Go ahead.
Thank you. When I received this question from you guys, I thought to myself, okay, so I'm on a school committee, right? That's the only committee that I'm officially on right now. And I'm like, but I have the perfect situation, a perfect answer for this. During the COVID, we had, many mandates, many things that were going across. And as a new school committee member, one of the first votes that we had to make was on whether or not we were going to have a mask mandate for the school. So what I did was I posted it on my Facebook page, and I posted it on social media to get the answers from the constituents, like what their feelings were. Now, when it all came down to it, the Commissioner of Education very safely said, you know what, everybody's going to start the school with masks. When I made a vote, because we still had a meeting, I voted that we shouldn't have an additional policy because we already had one, and it was because the parents spoke up and I listened to their voices.
Okay, thank you. We'll stay with you, Carrie.
Okay.
Abortion is legal here in Massachusetts. Do you support protecting and expanding access in Massachusetts? If not, why?
So protecting and expanding?
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, I myself personally am pro-life. That being said, I feel that it is a question that should be a ballot question to the people. If we are going to make any expansion or make any change, I think it should be a ballot question. I don't think a handful of legislators should be the ones that make that choice for us.
And you're finished with your answer?
I am.
Senator, the same question.
I am very proud that the Senate has protected a woman's right to abortion and to gender-affirming health care. The thought that for all of the years we have worked for equality for women, including right to decide about your own body, the thought that the young girls and women would grow up without that right, and that we would go back to the horrific times when young girls were dying because they were alone and had no ability to make that choice. It hits folks that have little money. Right now, the Massachusetts Senate has broadened the ability so that healthcare workers can perform abortions and not worry about suit that they may encounter in other states.
Senator, we'll stay with you for this next question. People are struggling with rising food, gas, and utility costs, along with trying to find a pay for child care and in some cases elder care. How will you help your constituents who are struggling to try to make ends meet?
So the child care bill that was discussed earlier is my bill. You can see it at comeandstartma.org. That is one of the foundational elements that we have been working on in the education for young families, the bipartisan committee that we've been working on. And that is going to come to fruition. There are 4 parts to it. It helps child care schools. It helps child care workers. Families right now can pay as much as child care as they do for their rent or their mortgage. So it's actually going to be an economic development bill to help families buy their home, because the state will have a margin of assistance in providing for that child. Also, it gives an opportunity to see kids when they're really young, be sure that they're healthy, and they get the attention that they need to be good learners, and this country is successful
Time.
going forward.
Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes.
People are struggling with rising costs for food, utilities, gas, along with trying to find and pay for child care and, in some cases, elder care. How will you help your constituents who are struggling to try to make ends meet?
I will make sure that I never vote for a tax increase. I will make sure that I fight to reduce taxes. I will make sure that when we are proposed as legislators, to have a relief, a temporary relief, that I will vote in favor of that.
And that's your
That's
answer?
it.
Okay. We'll move on to the next question. We'll stay with you. Wastewater is a huge and costly issue for Cape residents and for towns. How will you work to help address this infrastructure and ecological need?
Well, I will say that I'm still really getting into the whole wastewater, like how the process is and what the issues are around it. But I know that my son, being a resident in Falmouth, he said that, there's been a lot of increases in overall costs for water and such, and that it just doesn't seem like there's much of a fix that has happened. So I think that I would definitely be involved in the commissions that focus on that, and meet with the scientists and try to figure out what the best ways we can address that without adding additional cost to anybody.
And you were finished? Senator, the same question. Would you like me to restate it?
Wastewater, I got it, thank you.
Yep.
So I mentioned I was a member for years of the Wastewater Quality Coalition while I was a Falmouth Select Board member. And one of the things that happened in the legislature is that there was a dedicated fund created from what I like to call OPM, other people's money. So it's essentially a tax on visitation. There was concern about putting it in, that it may lower the interest in coming to Falmouth. That didn't happen. It's a fund right now so that the local communities can do large water projects and help keep our water clean. Right now, we've got ARPA funding, and the other thing I just kind of want to mention about our single aquifer is that we're fighting like hell against Holtec dumping radioactive waste into our Cape Cod Bay, and I'm leading that.
And now this is our final question for this race, and we'll stay with Senator Moran. Cape Cod is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, including sea level rise, warming temperatures, stronger storms, among other things. What would you do to help mitigate these impacts, help residents and towns?
So we wanted to stay ahead of this in Falmouth. So when I was Board of Selectmen chair, we created a Climate Action Committee. There was action in the word, in the committee word, because we had on the shelves terrific scientific reports from committee studies. We have terrific, we have got WHOI, NOAA, great scientific organizations right here. What we said on the board is, let's go from here and figure out what is going to be our plan. How are we going to keep the shore roads safe? How are we going to tell our residents whether you should invest in staying in your properties, whether you see a lot of homes being raised right now. We're also looking at alternative fuels. We've, electric cars. We've got wind energy in the ocean. And these things, the devil is going to be in the details. We're going to lose power like we always do for about 2 weeks. We've got to find a way to get batteries for our electricity. Thank you.
Carrie, would you like me to restate the question?
Sure.
Cape Cod is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, including sea level rise, warming temperatures, stronger storms, among other things. What would you do to help mitigate these impacts and support residents and towns?
Well, I think one thing that we definitely need to do is do more research. We just had, 2 windmills right here in Falmouth that cost the taxpayers a lot of money going up and coming back down. I know that some of the bills that are proposed right now want us to have to buy electric cars by 2030 or 2035, and I personally don't think people can afford that. So as much as we need to be cognizant and we need to make moves in the right direction, I think we also have to think about fiscal responsibility for our citizens.
Okay, so now we move on to each candidate's summary statement. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes, and we'll start with you first, Senator Moran.
Thank you very much. I have been really working toward this job for many, many years. I'm a practicing lawyer, a mom, a grandmother, and my kids went to school right here. I live right here. The most important thing to me when I became a select person was to volunteer for every single thing I possibly could to get a base of knowledge. I led the board, I led the Barnstable County in economic development. Right now, economic development is really the most important thing. It's the engine that drives everything moving forward. If we can have a healthy economy and we can attract folks here to work in Falmouth, we're going to continue to have that vibrant fabric of our terrific Main Street. I chaired the tourism committee in Falmouth about 20 years ago, and you may all remember the sidewalks rolled up at about 4 o'clock. Right now, we have the best restaurants on the Cape. We need the workforce, though. As we stand right now, when I visit the Upper Cape Tech, they're doing terrific things to educate young people with programs that pay well so they can afford to live on the Cape. We've got to address housing on that issue. But thank you all.
Go ahead.
Thank you again, everybody, for attending. And I will just say that I'm not going to sit here and talk about myself. I'm going to talk about the pressing issues of our district: inflation, housing, and safety and security. We have families struggling every day to afford to pay for their bills. We have people struggling right now making decisions on how they're going to afford to fill their oil tanks at $5.69 a gallon. Unfortunately, some of the lifelong residents in our community have been forced to move and leave the state, not just the district. Retirees are carefully planning for difficult choices that they may face, whether to buy their prescriptions or pay for heat in their homes. Substance abuse, overdoses, and deaths continue to rise. These are the issues. These are the reasons why I'm running, because I feel like we need an independent voice, not just somebody who's going to go in there and just go along with whatever the majority says. Right now, you have 37 state senators that are Democrat. You have 3 Republicans. There's no debate. There's no balance. There's no conversations. That's the reason why I'm running, to go up there and make sure that the independent people, the unenrolled, they have a voice.
Thank you both. Up next, we're going to hear from the candidates for Barnstable County Sheriff. Thank you. So we're now starting the portion of the evening about the Barnstable County Sheriff. Incumbent James Cummings is retiring after more than 20 years in the position, so the seat is open. Democrat Donna Buckley is running against Republican Tim Whalen, who is currently the state representative for the 1st Barnstable District. Again, 1 minute for each question, for each answer. We're going to do this alphabetically, so Donna, you're up first. What contributions have you made to the community that qualify you as a good candidate for the job?
Thank you, and thank everyone for coming tonight. I have spent the last 4 years working at the Sheriff's Office as the General Counsel. I bring to this election inside executive experience at the Sheriff's Office. I understand how the Sheriff's Office works. I understand the model that is currently in place. And I understand what our challenges are today. When I worked at the Sheriff's Office, I had the opportunity not only to work in our Barnstable County Sheriff's Office, but to work with sheriff's offices across the Commonwealth and with the Mass Sheriff's Association. I understand what we need to move forward to as our next model for the next 6 years to make sure that we can address the challenges that we are facing today. Our jails are filled with people suffering from addiction and mental illness, and we need a model at the Sheriff's Office that will make sure when people are released back to the streets that we are safe.
Thank you. My name's Tim Whalen, and I humbly ask for your vote to be your next Barnstable County Sheriff. I've come to this race having served the past 8 years in public policy, the Massachusetts State House as a state representative representing the 1st Barnstable District. But that's only part of my story. Prior to that, I'm the only candidate in this race that has the first-hand experience of delivering police service, public safety service, law enforcement service, correctional service. I worked for 5 years at the Worcester County Jail and House of Correction as a corrections officer. I graduated from the Massachusetts Department of Correction Training Academy. I graduated from the Massachusetts State Police Training Academy, and I served for 21 years as a Massachusetts State Trooper, where I was a shift commander out of the Bourne Barracks, overseeing patrols here with the state police in the town of Falmouth. My race for sheriff has also been endorsed by the Falmouth Police Patrol Federation, the Falmouth Police Lieutenants Union. I've been nearly unanimously endorsed by the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office Correction Officers Union and the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office Captains Union. Those
Time.
people deliver. Thank you.
Representative, we're going to stay with you for the next question.
Lovely.
I'm kind of looking here. This is a combination of a couple of questions from the audience. So, Barnstable County Sheriff's Office administers a variety of programs, including K-9, the 911 call center, police event details, the boat unit, and many others. What is your plan for the boat unit and the K-9 unit if you're elected?
Great question. Thank you very much. So the K-9 unit delivers incredibly important services here to the folks in the town of Falmouth. I just had a conversation last week with Chief Dunn. Chief Dunn was describing to me the importance of having these police K-9 patrols from the Sheriff's Office here in the town of Falmouth because the town of Falmouth Police Department is experiencing severe shortages in manpower. As a matter of fact, on that terrible day when 2 Falmouth patrol officers were shot in the line of duty, the 2 first responding officers on that scene that day were deputy sheriffs from the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office. Now, when it comes to the boat, what I believe in taking a proper managerial approach to this. Rather than stating up front, I'm going to decommission the boat immediately, I want to take a look and do a cost-benefit analysis. Look at the numbers and look at the types of missions that it's performed and compare that to the expense. Once that happens, we do that full cost-benefit analysis. We will see if we will continue to use it. If it's proving its utility, yes. If it's not, then we will decommission the boat.
Same question for you. Would you like me to restate it?
No, thank you. Our sheriff's role in public safety is correction, rehabilitation, and treatment. Our sheriff's role is to run our jail. We need to make sure that we can perform that mission in order to keep the people in Barnstable County safe. So when we think about programs like the boat, we need to make sure that we can do our own work first. While Mr. Whalen is talking about severe staffing shortages in the police departments in our towns, there are also severe staffing shortages at our jails. Our staff are not safe. Our inmates are dying. We have to prioritize, and leadership is about priorities. We need to make sure that the core mission of the Sheriff's Office and the taxpayer dollars that we all put forward to run the Sheriff's Office are used in a manner that will accomplish the mission of the Sheriff's Office. And we need to make sure that the work that belongs to other people,
Time.
that they do.
Donna, we'll stay with you for the next question.
Thank you.
How would you prepare inmates for release back into the community?
Could I have 2 hours instead of a minute?
60 seconds.
Okay. We need to look at the work at the Sheriff's Office from the time an inmate walks into the door. We need to do risk needs assessments. We need to figure out what they have as far as living arrangements, education, job skills, whether they're suffering from mental illness, addiction issues. We need to figure out what that looks like and start the work of rebuilding. The purpose of incarceration at our jail, where people are sentenced for low-level crimes, is to prepare them to re-enter our community. It's not to punish them. It's not to warehouse them. So we need to do the assessment and start the work while inmates are incarcerated with treatment programs, job skills, workforce training, work release, community service crews, education, and there's a long list. And then we need to meet with community partners to create a continuum of service, like bringing in AA meetings and Al-Anon
Time.
meetings.
Would you like me to restate the question?
No, thank you very much. I share Ms. Buckley's commitment to providing adequate programming to make sure that we prepare the incarcerated population for the best possible outcome. I received this year the Legislator of the Year Award from the Massachusetts Chief Probation Officers Association, and they gave me a lovely quote talking about my commitment to re-entry and ensuring that when people are released from a prison or from a jail, that they are best prepared to succeed when they're released. I want to continue the great work that our Sheriff Jim Cummings has been doing. Sheriff Cummings and the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office are recognized as national leaders in my preparing inmates for reentry. In preparing for tonight's event, I brought with me a copy of some documents from the Special Legislative Commission on Correctional Funding and DOC funding. One of the things that we see here on this bar graph is that the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office rates number 3 out of 14 sheriff's offices. Number 3 in money spent on inmate programming. In addition, they just received a $2.8 million
Time.
FAMSA grant. Thank you.
We'll stay with you for the next question.
Awesome.
The Barnstable County Sheriff's Office currently has an agreement of cooperation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Do you support continuing this agreement or ending it, and why?
Yes, I support continuing this agreement. I believe that it is a proven tool to help keeping our community safe. Between Sheriff Cummings and myself, we have over 75 years of public safety experience here on Cape Cod, keeping the Commonwealth and Cape Cod safe. I believe that the tool as it's used right now, where we identify that in many cases these are violent offenders who don't have any legal right to be in this country to begin with, one way to ensure that they don't reoffend within our community is to make sure that if they don't have the legal authority to be here in the first place, that they are permanently removed from our community by being referred over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. And the same question, would you like me to restate it?
No, thank
Go ahead.
you. I do not support continuation of the ICE agreement. The ICE agreement is a symptom of a problem that I see at the Sheriff's Office. It's a theme of the Sheriff's Office being involved in doing the work of other people, work that belongs to other people, at the expense of doing the work that we need to do at the jail. We are spending personnel and resources doing the work that ICE is supposed to be doing, while we're only spending 1.7% of the total budget on mental health for the inmates who we are then releasing back into the community, who are causing more crime and making more victims. So we do not need to continue with the ICE agreement. The ICE agreement the work is performed by someone else. The inmates are released not by the sheriff, but by the court, who determined, for whatever reason, that they are okay to be released. And our sheriff's office, our tax dollars
Time.
need to be directed inside.
Donna, we'll stay with you for the next question. The Provincetown Independent reports that the Barnstable County Jail has a capacity of close to 600, but over the last few years, the number of inmates held at the facility has dropped. And the paper reports that there are about 174 inmates in the facility as of earlier this month, so well below capacity. Would you consider changing staff levels or programming based on the dropping number of inmates?
At the present time, the jail is currently short-staffed. So the question of whether or not we need to reduce staff because we reduce the inmates is not in the context that we're currently experiencing. But the opportunities that are presented at the jail because of the number of inmates and the reduction in the inmates is the opportunity to rethink how we use the space. Right now, from our jail, inmates are released to the street from being in a cell 22 hours a day. We need to think about pre-release programming within our jail and thinking about how we are going to ease people back into our communities so that they have a chance of being successful. So we have the opportunity and the space within the jail to rethink the conditions of confinement so that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So if someone's going to be released in a week, then maybe their conditions of confinement should be a little bit different than someone who just walked in the door.
Same question for you, Representative. Would you like me to restate it?
Yes, please. I want to make sure I'm answering the question
Yes.
correctly. Thank you.
Provincetown Independent has recently reported that the Barnstable County Jail has a capacity of nearly 600, but over the last few years, the number of inmates have dropped, and as of earlier this month, the paper reports there were about 174 inmates being held at the facility. Knowing this, would that prompt you to consider changing staff levels or other programs?
Thank you. The answer to that is no. And the aforementioned, I previously mentioned the Special Legislative Commission on Correctional Funding for Sheriffs and the Department of Correction, which I sat on. This was a commission that was staffed by members from the National Sheriffs Association, Massachusetts Sheriffs Association, National Institute of Corrections, legislative leaders. We even had a couple of reporters that were on board. We asked this exact question at the end of our deliberations when we produced our report. And what we knew then and what we stated clearly in our report, it is impossible right now to determine whether or not these numbers are going to stay stable. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to evaluate what the population is now as a result of the Criminal Justice Reform Act of 2018 and that's effect on sentencing, as well as the effect of the sentencing from the court on COVID. We're unsure where we are right now. Until we get a really good snapshot of where that number is going to be and where it stays, we cannot, it would be irresponsible to start tinkering with staffing. Thank you.
And this is the final question for you both. We're going to stay with Representative Whalen first. Substance abuse disorder does not magically stop for a person once they become incarcerated. So how would you address addiction issues among inmates in the county jail?
Sure. I had mentioned earlier that the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office is recognized as a national leader in this area, and where they currently rate number 3 out of the 14 sheriffs in what they provide for funding, $6,060 per incarcerated person, and that does not include all the money that they receive in federal grants. So what we have to look at is we have to look at not only the programming inside the facility, but what we can provide for follow-on programming outside of the facility and the supports that we can provide. The Sheriff's Office maintains a bully pulpit that we can use to try and make sure that we can get housing for these people, that we can set them up with employment, that we can make sure that they're getting the medical health and the mental health supports that they receive. We know that they're going to get them on request within the facility. In order to set them up to succeed, we have to make sure that they're continuing to receive these services when they get back onto the street, because if they don't, we're setting them up to fail, and they're only going to come back in, and that's not acceptable.
Thank you. The same question for you. Would you like me to restate it?
Yes, please.
Substance abuse disorder does not magically stop for a person once they become incarcerated. How would you address addiction issues among inmates incarcerated at the county jail?
60 to 80% of the inmates at Barnstable County Jail are suffering from addiction and mental illness. Before I left my job at the jail in March, I had the ability to design, implement, and apply for the grant and the license for the MAT program. Our county jail is not nationally recognized when it comes to substance use disorder treatment. Our county jail is almost dead last. It took our county jail 4 years longer than other county jails to implement full medication-assisted treatment programs. And in the meantime, in those 4 years, people died. Our county jail needs to make sure that we are meeting the challenges with substance use disorder for all inmates. We also need to make sure that substance use treatment programs are available equally to males and females in our jail. Currently, they are not. We have a residential substance abuse treatment program, but that is only available to men. We need to make sure that women have equal programming. And I urge you all to look at the 101 Commission report that Tim Whalen is referring to, because it does not paint a pretty picture of Barnstable County.
And that concludes the question and answer portion of the evening. We're going to move on to summary statements. Again, you have a minute and a half, and Representative Whalen, you're first.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Falmouth Community TV and the League of Women Voters for having us here today. I'd also like to thank my opponent, Donna Buckley. Thank you very much, Donna, for your participation today. And you certainly have in front of you 2 qualified candidates that you voters are going to be able to choose from. And again, I want to thank Donna for running, because it certainly takes guts to put your name out there. I know that, and she knows that now as well. I also want to take a moment to thank my good friend, Sheriff Jim Cummings, for his 50 years of service. He's a proud Falmouth resident. He's raised his family in this community, and I am blessed to have his endorsement, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity, if I am honored with the endorsement of the voter, to succeed him as your next Barnstable County Sheriff. I've gotten to know Falmouth very well, particularly these past several months of door knocking. I've been all over neighborhoods, all over the town of Falmouth, and it's been great. I've had some wonderful conversation with the residents here, and it's been fantastic. I also want to highlight my dedication to public service. I've spent 34 years now in public service. Since I was 19 years old, I speak often about my experience in law enforcement, but my 8 years, I've established a very public record in the legislature, and I believe that it's been a very positive record, and you can be assured that that will continue if I'm blessed to be your next sheriff. But most importantly, above all else, what I'm most proud of is I'm proud of being a husband to my beautiful wife, Lisa, for 32 years, and together we're the parents of our 2 beautiful daughters, Maggie and Katie. They both graduates of Nauset Regional High School, not Falmouth, Nauset.
Time.
My family and I love Cape Cod. We love our community. We love all of our people. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and you, Kathy, for moderating this forum tonight. This election will determine the direction of our sheriff's office for the next 6 years. I am running, and I left my job to run, to bring to Barnstable County a modern, professional sheriff's office that is focused on the core mission of correction, rehabilitation, and treatment. We need to make sure that our sheriff's office meets the challenges of today and tomorrow. 90% of Americans today agree that we are in the midst of a mental health crisis. 70% believe that the opioid epidemic is a crisis. Our jails are filled with people suffering from addiction and mental illness. We must prioritize the resources, our tax dollars, that we get in order to make sure that the inmates who are sent to the Barnstable County Jail and House of Correction have the tools and resources they need to succeed when they are released. That is the sheriff's role in public safety. The sheriff's responsibility is to cut down on the revolving door of recidivism. We need to make sure our programs are part of our budget, not funded by grants. We need to make sure that more than 1.7% of our budget is spent on mental health. We need to hire qualified professionals to run inmate services, and I ask for your vote on November 8th.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Very welcome.
Next, we're going to have, thank you very much, thank you. Next, we're going to have the candidates for district attorney joining us up on stage. So now you're going to hear from the candidates for District Attorney. District Attorney Michael O'Keefe is also retiring after multiple terms, so this seat is open as well. Republican Daniel Higgins and Democrat Robert Galabois are here with us now, and they're going to be taking 6 questions as well. The same format, 1 minute to answer each question, and we'll start alphabetically. So that means, Robert, you're up first.
Okay. Can you hear me?
What contributions have you made to this community that qualify you as a good candidate for the job?
I've been practicing law now for 27 years, both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. I've handled the most serious cases that come before our courts, including 15 murders and manslaughter cases. I've practiced in all the courthouses across the Cape and the Islands. I've been in now about 70 courthouses across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I believe I'm up to now about a dozen states across the country. I offer it's that unique and deep experience that I have that greatly distinguishes me in this particular race. I've literally gotten to see district attorneys across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the country try to transform priorities of theirs into practice. I got to see what works and what doesn't work. And what I see over the bridges are a couple programs known as the Mental Health Session and the Veterans Session. We don't have those here in the Cape and the Islands, and I very much look forward to bringing them during my term. Thank you.
Same question for you.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Higgins, and I'm running to be your next district attorney for the Cape and Islands. For the past 13 years, I have devoted my entire legal career to working for the Cape and Islands District Attorney's Office as a prosecutor. I have worked towards public safety by prosecuting violent crime and drug traffickers to the fullest extent of the law, and working with those who come to our court system out of human frailty. I believe in treating people as individuals, not policies. I believe this office deserves an experienced professional prosecutor to lead this office. I have led a team of 10 prosecutors. I have supervised 5 courts. I am the only candidate who has prosecuted every type of crime, including murder, on Cape Cod. I humbly ask for your attention and your consideration in the upcoming election. Thank you very much.
Daniel, we're going to stay with you for the next question. What do you regard as the most important functions of the district attorney for Barnstable County?
First and foremost, the calling of the district attorney is to follow the law and work towards community safety. We do that by prosecuting crime. As I mentioned a moment ago, crimes of violence, crimes of fentanyl trafficking, the issue on Cape Cod right now. The traffickers are targeting our vulnerable citizens who may turn to substance use out of pain, out of emotion, out of depression. We need to continue to prosecute those offenders. That is the calling of this office. We also work towards crime prevention. We have a community outreach program, the leader of which, Danielle Whitney, I'm happy to say, is receiving an award this month from the Boston United States Attorney's Office for her work in the community in doing outreach. We have 5 such professionals in this office. I am honored to work with this team of professionals, and I believe I will be a cohesive beginning to a new administration in this office, and I would be honored to do it.
Robert, the same question for you. Would you like me to restate it?
No, that's okay. I would actually agree with what Mr. Higgins just said, that public safety is first and foremost the most important function of the district attorney's office. I would also indicate that community engagement is important, as the DA serves the community and must have an understanding of what's going on in the community. Fighting the opioid crisis remains an important function, of course, as well, by targeting the drug dealers and supporting those services that are available for those dealing with substance use disorder. We must also target those who prey upon the most vulnerable in our communities, and I'm speaking specifically of children and seniors. The DA, I've said many times, is the conscience of the community and must be the community's protector. Thank you.
Robert, we'll stay with you for the next question. How would you ensure that political affiliations do not govern the hiring of professional staff in the DA's office?
Hiring must be based on merit. And when you go to hire, you have an opportunity to embrace both gender and racial equality. I've been very fortunate in my practice carrying me throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I've gotten to know a lot of talented professionals that want to come work in our office and help us with the promotion of criminal justice. I've also been mentioning that our employees, including yours truly, will engage in 4 hours of community service every single month. That's not political, that's civic. So by doing that, you're keeping politics out of the hiring process. Thank you.
Same question. Would you like me to restate it?
Thank you. No. 13 years ago, I was hired in this office. I didn't know anyone within the office. I had a connection to the Cape, having grown up here in the summers in Dennis, and I was willing to move for this job. I wanted to be a prosecutor first and foremost. I was in a prosecutor's clinic in law school that confirmed my passion trying cases in Dorchester District Court. I was honored to be hired in this office. I have never in 13 years felt political pressure from anyone in the office on any case. I have been a supervisor as my career progressed, working in Superior Court and supervising all of the district courts and the 10 ADAs that work in it. As part of that role, over the past 7+ years, I was on the hiring committee for the district attorney's office. We recently hired an ADA from the Falmouth area who, during his interview, discussed a prior candidacy he had in the Democrat Party. It was wonderful to hear. He was a very intelligent candidate, and we hired him. When I was hired, no one asked me any party affiliation. Politics has no business in this office, and it won't going forward.
Daniel, we'll stay with you for this next question. As Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Barnstable County, what would you do to help ensure the integrity of local elections?
Sure, I understand that is a concern in recent years on the national level. What I would say is this, I think facts are the best information to assuage the concerns of the community. When people ask for information because they have a concern, as public officials, we should provide that information. What I can provide you is my 13 years of experience. In working as a prosecutor on Cape Cod for 13 years, I have seen 3 cases of election issues with a criminal charge. 3. Those cases have been and are being prosecuted. I have full faith in the election system. We have, on Cape Cod, we have fair and open elections. That's ensured by our diligent poll workers and our town clerks, who are under great pressure to make sure these elections run openly and fairly. I have full confidence in those officials on Cape Cod. I have not seen widespread issue, and any issue we do see where an individual does something wrong, those issues are prosecuted.
Same question for you, Robert. Would you like me to restate?
No, that's not necessary. I would join him in saying that I have full faith and credit in our town officials to run fair elections. I would offer that there's never been any evidence established to prove that there hasn't been a fair election for generations here on Cape Cod. I have called out and I disavow any election denier, including the sitting district attorney, who claimed that there was significant fraud in the most recent election. For those that question this offering, he was quoted in the Cape Cod Times on January 7th, 2021, or the day after the insurrection. I will support all of our local officials as they pursue their obligations to conduct the elections. I will not stand for any pressure or coercion or false claims tossed at them, and my office will fully prosecute anyone that tries to intimidate our local officials as they try to do their jobs. Thank you.
Robert, we'll stay with you for this next question. Specialty courts provide court-supervised probation and require treatment for things like substance use disorder, and they've become increasingly popular around the country. Would you support having one, such as a mental health court, come to the region?
I would very much support that. Again, based on my experience, having practiced over the bridges for quite a long time, these specialty courts, these mental health sessions, exist in all counties across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, except the Cape and the Islands. In a mental health session, similar to a recovery court type session, which was formerly known as drug court, the professionals in the field work with the struggling defendant before the judge. They work to try to identify that core issue and therefore treat that core issue. And by treating that core issue, you reduce recidivism. And when you reduce recidivism, of course, you keep us all safer. In a similar vein, I've been looking to launch a veteran session. These sessions also exist across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Veterans bring their own uniqueness by calling upon veterans in the community and asking them to volunteer and come in and work with a struggling veteran. Again, you reduce recidivism. Thank you.
Daniel, same question?
Thank you. Again, in this area of concern of the public, I think information is power. I have met with the court system, the first justice of the Barnstable District Court. I have discussed these concerns, and what I have done over the years is referred individuals to the Veterans Court in Brockton and the Mental Health Court in Plymouth. There's maybe one a year for each of those types of referrals. There are not that many veterans committing crimes on Cape Cod. We do have a large veteran population, but the court does not believe there is enough criminal activity to sustain that session, and those few and far between referrals that are necessary, we send to those specialty courts off Cape. What we do is often divert the minor crimes by a veteran or by someone with a mental health issue prior to arraignment or prior to any disposition. We are given information by the police about mental health when they learn of it, and we're given information when someone is a veteran from probation, and we act accordingly
Time.
and work with them.
Thank you. And this is the final question. Daniel, we'll stay with you. The district attorney's office, the primary function is prosecution of crimes, but education and prevention to keep the community safe is a large component of what you do. How would you address education and community interaction?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we have a team of 5 professionals working in this office already who do community outreach. They go into our schools, they go to fairs put on for mental health treatment, for substance abuse disorder, and we are engaged in the community. There's always room for improvement. If I was elected district attorney, I would welcome groups into my office who believe they have new, fresh ideas, new avenues for treatment to address those substance abuse issues, to address mental health issues on Cape Cod. But as we know, we can't stop all drugs from coming on Cape Cod. We need to work to continue to prosecute the dealers. And I believe actions speak louder than words sometimes. In this profession, certainly everyone deserves a defense accused of a crime. But I ask you to look at my career path. I have devoted my legal career to working on behalf of the people, the Commonwealth, and to try and lock up those serious offenders who plague our community. We do the outreach, I
Time.
believe in it, and I will work with the community.
Robert, same question. Would you like me to restate?
No, that's not necessary. I've been talking about since January how on the first day of my administration, I would create what's called a community engagement officer or liaison. Some people got confused when I'm saying officer, the person would have a badge and a gun. That's not the case. This person will be a civilian. And their exclusive responsibility is going to be in our neighborhood communities every single day to keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on and report directly back to me. They're not going to have an office. They have a car, a cell phone, and a ferry ticket. We've also talked about launching a community coalition. These exist, again, over the bridges, not here on the Cape and the islands. The coalitions would be comprised of local elected officials, like select board members, school committee members, police officers, and us, regular citizens. We gave it a cute name. We're calling it the DA and us. We're going to have monthly meetings, and it's going to provide just another avenue for us to remain connected to the people that we serve and be able to identify what issues are going on in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. It's time now for your summary statements. You each have a minute and a half for your statement, and Daniel, you go first.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Dan Higgins, and I'm running to be your next district attorney for the Cape and Islands. I have lived on Cape Cod in West Barnstable. I live there now with my wife Elizabeth and my son Charlie. We are raising here on the Cape. This is my home. I have been here full-time as a prosecutor and resident for the last 13 years. I've devoted my entire legal career to public safety and prosecuting criminal offenses on Cape Cod. I don't believe in policies that are cookie cutter and say if this is the crime, then this is the outcome. My opponent has proposed some in the area of bail. What I would suggest is everyone should be treated as an individual. This office and the people of Cape and Islands deserve to have an experienced, professional prosecutor running this office. If I'm elected, I will lead to cohesion within this office, not turmoil and upheaval. I know the experienced professionals who are working for you currently. I know how devoted they are to this career. I know they're not in it for the money. I have never taken money on behalf of those charged and convicted with drug trafficking on the Cape and Islands. I have devoted every day of my career to public safety. I humbly ask for your vote in the upcoming general election. I would be honored to be your next district attorney. I believe this is a professional one, not a political one. And thank you very much for your consideration.
Robert, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to address your questions. The DA represents the conscience of the community. I will bring a mental health session to the Cape and the Islands. I will bring a veteran session to the Cape and the Islands. To fight against the business of drug traffickers, I will employ prosecutors who will use tactics that are not utilized here on the Cape and Islands. And I'm speaking specifically of seeking to detain those who traffic in fentanyl and heroin at their arraignment by having them found as a danger every single time. I will assemble a team of seasoned prosecutors to focus on those who prey on the most vulnerable, as I mentioned earlier, our children and our seniors. To remain engaged with the people that we serve, as I mentioned earlier, we were going to create that community coalition. I have lived on the Cape for 20 years. I've been practicing for 27 years as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. I've seen both sides of the courtroom. I run my own business. I've had to create a budget and operate inside of that budget. I've given back to my community by serving on the planning board, a school committee, and the finance committee. I have presented the vision or new visions to arrive at public safety by employing tough on crime laws to combat drug traffickers and career offenders.
Time. Thank you both.
This close. Thank you.
And we turn to the final race of the evening, County Commissioner. Thank you. So there are two candidates in this race for County Commissioner, but Republican Ron Beatty declined to attend tonight. So I will be asking questions to incumbent Democrat Ronald Bergstrom. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
As with the other candidates this evening, you'll have 1 minute to answer each question, and then you can make a summary statement at the end. Okay. All right. What contributions have you made to the community that qualify you as a good candidate for this job?
Well, I've been in public service now for 20 years. I started as a selectman in my town of Chatham. I served for 12 years in that capacity. I served on the Assembly of Delegates, Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates, for 12 years, 8 years as Speaker. I am now, of course, an incumbent county commissioner. I've served almost 4 years in that position. And I do it because I feel very, very fortunate to have wound up here almost 47, 48 years ago, just by chance. And it has really been a wonderful experience for me. This is a tremendous area to live in. It's full of wonderful, not only is the environment nice, but the people are too. So I felt at some point when I got into my 40s that it was time to give something back, and I've been trying to do that to the best of my ability ever since. And I'm hoping that I can continue to do that for the next 4 years to serve you as your county commissioner.
What are your priorities for using federal funds allocated to Barnstable County earlier this year?
Well, of the 40 million we received, 10 million was put aside to separate grants to the various towns according to their population, and a lot of that money, including money gone to Falmouth, has gone toward wastewater projects. There are other things involved, infrastructure, but that has been the top priority. We're now putting aside 5 million at my urging for small grants to civic organizations, nonprofits, and others who have had a tough time during the COVID crisis, because I think that a lot of that money should go directly to the people who need it. That leaves us with $25 million. The top priorities are the top two priorities are going to be wastewater and housing. And I haven't got a magic bullet to solve either of those issues. They're big issues. They're going to be solved incrementally as we move ahead with the wastewater management plans, as we move ahead by providing housing through through various small projects to the 15 towns, but the Barnstable County is going to be a player, and we're going to use our funds to do that.
What are the three biggest issues facing Barnstable County right now?
Well, as I just said, wastewater. Wastewater is probably on the top of the list. And the secondly is housing, as some of the other candidates have discussed. It's a big issue. The third issue, to me, is a human service issue. You know, like, even though this is considered a resort area, like anywhere else, we have the same problems that have the places across the country have. We have an addictive population. We have a homeless population. There's an increase in youth suicide. We have the oceans knocking on our door, eroding our beaches. So Barnstable County's been fortunate because we're a regional agency. We've been able to access, just in the last fiscal year, over $12 million in state and federal funds to put toward those uses. So the priorities are wastewater, which is a huge issue and very expensive, but we're going to be a player, and housing, which is also a very tough issue. It's not going to be solved overnight. We're going to have to do many, many small things and a few big things to solve that. Thank you.
There's been some tension this year between county commissioners and the Assembly of Delegates, particularly regarding how to spend federal money that was allocated to the county. Yeah. How do you work to resolve issues as they arise between the commissioners and the delegates?
Well, when the issue about how to dispense the ARPA funds came up, I was chair of the commissioners, and it was essentially a legal dispute. You know, as true in places like Falmouth, money that's appropriated through the budget process has to go through town meeting. Money that comes from outside, for instance, in grants, is spent by the executive branch. In your case, the selectmen, and that is how it was in the county for many, many years, back to 1989. The Assembly, through their attorney, had a different view, and so rather than go into a legal dispute, I was chair, and I did everything in my power to see that we come to a compromise, and since then, we have come to an uneasy compromise, but a compromise, and now both branches of Barnstable County government have to approve any spending coming through the ARPA funds.
Okay. What role does the county commission play, in your opinion, in addressing issues that are regional, like climate change?
Is it climate?
Climate change.
Well, one thing we did, I also sit on the county commission, county commission. We studied, we financed a study of the entire coast of Cape Cod to see where the weak spots were in the areas immediate to the water, because oftentimes when there's an event, there's a sea level rise, the water overtops the dune and it floods the areas behind the dune. So by doing GIS, we determined where those weak areas are, so that next time when the water rises, it'll only affect the immediate coastline and it won't flood the interior areas. So we've done things like that. Of course, we have a dedication to green energy. You know, we put up charging stations. And the Cape Cod Commission, which is what I'm a member of, we also require, we require developments of regional impact to have a green energy section. Okay, thank you.
And this is your final question. What can the county do to support small businesses that are struggling to find workers?
Well, once again, that's a housing issue. We provide things like soft second mortgages to various projects that have affordable housing sections around the entire Cape. I can only say that housing is a tough issue. It goes town by town. I was very successful in Chatham in our affordable housing program. We do have a housing section in the regional policy plan, and I'm going to do everything I can when the opportunities arise, because that's really, housing is opportunistic. You see an opportunity and you've got to take advantage of it. A piece of property that's available, a mall that's gone by, where we can put in affordable housing, concentrated affordable housing, adjacent to amenities and adjacent to transportation. So that's the best I can answer that question.
In 60 seconds.
It's a huge issue, and I haven't got a magic bullet. So.
And that was your final question for the evening, and you now have the opportunity to take a minute and a half and make a final statement.
Well, I thought back to a quote by a man called Robert Johnson. I didn't know who Robert Johnson was, but his quote goes like this: "The world is run by those who show up." Okay, and you know, as I embarked on my re-election campaign in the spring, I'd hoped to concentrate on all the very good things that we have done. You know, we vaccinated over 50,000 people in Barnstable County at our nursing staff and our health department. 50,000 people that didn't have to drive to Gillette. You know, at one point, Barnstable County was the most vaccinated county in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts led the nation. You know, we set up a police training academy in response to the demand or the need of our towns to have policemen and not have to send them for training off Cape. We put aside just recently $2.5 million to study our freshwater ponds to keep them free of cyanobacteria. And we've been heavily involved in wastewater treatment. So I'm proud of the work that I've done. I don't go on social media. I'd like to speak to people. It's important that I know how you think. It's important that you know how I think. And I'm hoping that you'll support me for another 4 years as county commissioner. So thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Falmouth Community Television for organizing this event. Thank you to all of those who attended and submitted questions. And for those of you who watched on TV and online, good night.